how terrible I am at this, to be completely honest.
Guess what? Both of you are like black belts next to me, so don't even worry about it.
Well, welcome to Gary and Mark from the SD Hist Con attendee list. This is a recording that we're going to make exclusively available to SD Hist Con attendees. And we appreciate you guys taking the time to talk about the con a little bit, what you're going to do, what you're bringing. And Gary, first SD Hist Con coming up here.
It will be. Yeah, absolutely. Hotel reservations already made. I got to make the plane. I got to get the plane tickets this week, I think.
Yes.
So well, it's happening.
That's the expensive part, but good luck with that.
Well, I actually have solved all of it's done.
Everything.
Well, I have it just so
other than actually going.
Prior to COVID, I was going to California a great deal, and I had this enormous number of miles, and so back and forth, first class, no cost.
Well, that's nice if you can get it.
Well, I had a ridiculous number of points, and now everybody says you should save them. Said I'm always worried about them taking them away from me, so I'm just using them. I don't care.
I will be traveling in the luggage compartment.
Well, as long as they give you a little oxygen, you should be okay.
and possibly a bag of those terribly, terribly dry cookies that they give you on the airplanes.
What's that called? Steerage class?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. So looking forward to seeing you guys and Gary, knowing that it's your first. Is it your first trip to San Diego? Have you been to San Diego before?
I have not. I've been to California. I've just never been to Southern California. So this will be interesting to find out. If my wife comes with me, she can tell me how nice it is in San Diego. And if she doesn't come with me, that's why I've been waiting on dragging my feet on buying the plane tickets. If she doesn't come with me, then I'll get to hear about how nice it was when I get home. And that'll be fun.
Yes. Well,
so
good luck with that. I look forward to meeting Miss Ardwulf.
Just watch the papers. Just watch the local newspapers. It'll.
Mark, you're coming solo, is that right?
Yes, I am definitely coming solo. It so happens that the week after SD Hist Con, there is a very large birthday party at my house, and Carol is doing whatever Carol's doing for that. So she's not coming.
Understood.
Which also makes it a little easier on me because this way I could just, go play, go out, do whatever, and I have to, I don't have to deal with not like I love dealing with her, but just one less thing to deal with.
Well, Carol is, in my recollection, is independent and will do her own thing.
Oh yeah, if she was here, I wouldn't. It'd just be nighttime. Where we're having dinner kind of thing is all we'd be discussing,
right.
But. I now have free for dinners now, so it's good.
Yeah. We had a great dinner in Newport, Rhode Island, as a matter of fact. You, me, Jeff Engelstein, and Kai Jensen was there.
Engelstein and Carol.
Yeah, it's great. You guys picked up the tab. That's the best part of having dinner with you guys.
Yeah, we're there's big fortunes one makes in game design. We want to.
Oh yeah. I hear there's some good eating down there in San Diego, so I'm looking forward to that.
There's a lot of good stuff. But we're 20 miles from the border tops, depending on how the crow flies and if the crow drives. And so there's a ton of great Mexican food and Mexican influenced foods. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, lots of great seafood. Our favorite seafood restaurant is just a couple blocks from the.
I will be. I remember one time I was on a business trip and we were in, was it Kansas City? Yeah, I think it was Kansas City or Leavenworth, Kansas, somewhere over there. Obviously, Kansas City is not in Kansas, but we were in Leavenworth, Kansas, I think, and we were at a place and the guys were all getting ready to order seafood. I said, do you see an ocean anywhere near here?
I was going to say.
This is the middle of the country. Get a steak, buddy.
Whatever you can get out of the river, I guess. Having seen the rivers in Cleveland, maybe that's not advisable, but I don't know.
But when you're in San Diego, fish is.
Oh, that's different, yeah.
There's an ocean. You can actually, when you see water, when you can see to the horizon water, fish is definitely on the menu in my mind.
Yes.
And the facility, correct me if I'm wrong here, and I've only seen this on the maps, but the facility itself is like 20 feet from the water, as I recall.
Yeah, it is. Roughly a block. We're going to have a mixer Thursday night.
What is that? Is it 20 feet from the ocean or 20 feet from the bay?
Well, it's the bay, right?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. So it's but we also call that the ocean. So I will accept both answers.
Okay.
It's still salt water, right?
Oh,
yes.
It's definitely slow water. Yes.
Yeah. So Point Loma Seafood is the seafood place we like. A couple blocks, also on the water, and very believable because it's a big fish market.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll tell you, just make me my reservation now because that's where I'll eat. I mean, I can eat there every day. I mean, when it comes to fish, there's a lot of different kinds of fish. I mean, you can eat every single day there.
Yeah. My favorite is a fried scallop sandwich.
Doesn't sound too bad.
Phenomenal. Unbelievable.
I would eat that, to be fair.
Oh yeah.
We could have this entire production was supposed to be about food, right, Harold?
Yes. Yes.
Because I could keep going.
And then there's a Mexican restaurant called Miguel's that's that's a block away, also phenomenal.
Harold, I expect that that I don't mean that you have to eat with me, but if you should always make sure you're directing me to the right location.
Well, come confer with me. It's always a great pleasure to eat with you, Mark Herman. So especially when you pay. So
absolutely.
And the scallop sandwich would be a great opportunity for you to pay. It's one of those things where on the menu it says market price, and that means
that could
double
be
or triple what everything else should be, right?
Well, market price. The question really is with shellfish for me, not with regular, certain kind of fish. Is it farm raised or is it like they took it out of the ocean? So the farm raised stuff is not always as appetizing if I can avoid it.
Mark, you and I were playing games once when you were in California. We met at a game store in LA, and we used to go.
Oh yeah, the Empire was it called?
Something like that, yeah.
I thought it was Gaming Empire or something.
So I stopped at a Vietnamese restaurant and had some spring rolls on the way up, and you called me and I said, "You want me to bring you something?" You said, "Yeah, bring me some spring rolls." So I brought him some shrimp spring rolls, and you looked at him and you said, "I'm not eating that."
Yeah, well, you have to, Vietnamese shrimp. Oh yeah,
which I promptly ate, and then we went to I think McDonald's or something.
Yeah, that's fine. So Gary, what do you, I know you're always clipping it. What war game have you actually been playing lately? Anything?
Well, we actually took a break from, well, not really a break. We kind of packed up CSS Saipan, and we started doing Federation and Empire, which I have been wanting to play.
Stand for? Is that like a game system?
Yeah, it's basically this is deep. I could go into the weeds here, but it's basically Star Trek with the serial numbers filed off as a strategic game, except that unlike any other attempts that file the serial numbers off, they actually do have a license. It's just a really weird license. It's the same like universe as Starfleet Battles, except it's the strategic game, right? Where it's
so
Federation versus
the Klingon Empire, the Romulans.
Exactly.
Yeah, big stuff.
Exactly.
That's
so.
Fun.
I think it's pretty cool. It's very bookkeepy, but I like that. So lots of folks will bounce hard off of that.
I've been playing. We're gonna, you saw the computer version of Gettysburg, right?
Yeah.
You at least know of it. Well,
yes.
I've been testing the Rebel Fury version, so it's going to be very cool.
Excellent. That'll be nice to get more battles. I've actually got it. I haven't had the time to do anything. The computer version, that is. I haven't had time to do anything with it yet.
Yeah. But I'm having a good time with it. But of course, I'm like the first tester of it. That it's done, and the AI needs a lot of work. But I go along and I try all the more complicated maneuvers, and I thought, oh, punt, this is not working. And I immediately take a screenshot, send it to the guy. He fixes it like that. But but we're into cleaning up little tiny things. But it really does work well. It's based on the Gettysburg thing, so it works already in the system. But it's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's the same guy that did
and Chickamauga. What?
Same guy that did your Gettysburg game.
His guy's name is Bob Tilton, I believe is his name. Bob, if I get that wrong, I apologize, but I'm pretty sure that's his name. But he's the developer. So yeah, I've been having a good time with that, and that's pretty much what I did this week. Well, and watching grandchildren. My daughter So, grandchildren, Rebel Fury,
My week included breaking a toe and building IKEA furniture. So
How did you break the toe,
did one contribute to the other, or there's independent events?
nope, totally unrelated. I took my shoes off, was coming to the house, and jacked my foot on the step coming into the living room, and then looked down at the foot like 20 minutes later. Still hurt. Oh, it's bleeding. Oh boy. And I examined it, and I'm like, yeah, it's busted.
What was was it a curse word of exasperation when you hit it?
Oh, many new curse words were in fact invented on the spot right after I hit it.
Mom would not have been proud.
No, well, where do you think I learned my curse words, Harold? So you wouldn't even have recognized the languages I was speaking for the immediate 5 minutes immediately after I whacked it. So I haven't had it looked at. It's busted, but there's not much they do about it unless you manage to like crush it under a building or something, right?
Is it the little toe or big toe? What's the?
No, it's the index toe. I don't know what the name of that toe is. It's like the first toe next to the big toe.
The toe that you point with normally.
The one that sticks out and hits the step is the one that it is.
It all sounds not fun.
It's been a riot, let me tell you.
Doesn't sound fun.
Let's hope that's resolved before you get there, so you're highly mobile.
That's okay. I'll just buy one of those little 1 foot little skateboard things that they have.
To change the topic to SD Hist Con for a moment.
Please.
So, hey, Harold, the question that you meant to ask me was, so what are you going to do at the con, Mark?
Yes, thank you.
So, well, first off, as you know, I've always had a little bit of convention envy with the guys with the big East Front maps, 28 maps, 14. Well, the 14 million counters I never was a big fan of, but they get these big stacks and it looks really dramatic. So I'm going to be bringing Army of the Potomac with its 12-foot map, but only a total of I don't think there's 50 counters at any given time on the map total. So there's a lot. When I say that it's got a lot of room for maneuver, it's got a lot of room for maneuver. So that should be
that's going to be interesting to see.
It'll be interesting.
Looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah. What I might hope to do is if, let's say somebody starts and they kind of get tired and they want to do something else, I'll just I won't stop. I won't reset up. I'll just say, hey, keep going. We'll just keep, we fired that commander. Now you're in charge and see how it goes.
That's awesome.
Reynolds has been killed. So
he not in this particular set of battles, but yeah, it's, it was interesting. I wrote an article I wrote my Cleo's Corner. In fact, I talked to Roger today. I was just checking on him. When you get to my age and one of your friends gets sick, you want to, as I told you, Harold, you check on them just to make sure everything's not too bad.
Right.
I've had a couple recently where it was that bad, and so so you do want to check. At least that's my thing these days. But the point of the story is that I've been playing Army of the Potomac. And it's just kind of going. It's a good time. I mean, so we'll have something dramatic to look at, and then then you had this idea, Harold, of getting a lot of people to play Rebel Fury simultaneously, which would be great. We'll have a good time with that. I did that at SD Hist Con. What do we have I had 4 games going, which, by the way, remember 8 people out of 64 or something like that. So 12% of the convention was playing, if you want to think of it that way. It's more than
that would be a bigger bite here, given that we're at about $1, $1.70, $1.50, $1.70.
Oh yeah. Well, like I said, what I love about the Naval War College is, it's a very intimate kind of, I probably know half the people well, and then the other half, it's nice to meet them,
Yeah, exactly. We're doing something a little different this year with regard to events. There are a lot of different people that come to a game convention, and as ours gets bigger and bigger, we're starting to become more and more cognizant of that. Some of them come with friends and play with those friends, right? And that's all they do, or they seek out a Mark Herman and do something with him or whatever. And some people are more comfortable with that, and others aren't. Some people come and they don't know anybody, and maybe they've never been to a convention. Imagine that, right? So that's a big piece of our group, and we're more than happy to have those players come, but we have to do more to accommodate their needs. So we're working harder this year to create events for a big group of people. And, I've always been jealous. We're a relatively small convention, but WBC has a very cool idea. When they put on an event, they just set the schedule and they say, we're playing Africa Corps today.
Mm.
And the way you can guarantee a seat at the Africa Corps event is to bring the game. And if you bring a game under your arm, you will play Africa Corps. Right. And I thought, what a nice way for us to do that. It's impossible for us to get big numbers of games together ourselves. We don't have a library. We're individual gamers.
Well, by the way, just as you know, the library, the WBC, they've had to curate that thing. I mean, it literally gotten to they couldn't even store it anymore.
It's an administrative nightmare. We won't have a library to the con. So what the idea is that we're going to put on these events, and there's 2 of them for Rebel Fury. Mark's nice enough to accommodate us, but one on Friday, one on Saturday, I think. And the idea is that if you have a copy of the game, bring it. You're assured a seat. And everybody else that comes will have seats up to the number of games, right? And and Mark, you and I are going to have a few games there as well. But we should be able to accommodate a large number of people. You'll give us a little lecture on how to play and some strategy tips, and then we'll get going and play Rebel Fury as many times as we want. So so these big events we're trying to curate those to give people an outlet that don't necessarily have a reference group. The other cool thing, I'll continue if you don't mind. The other cool thing we're doing is we have this Discord server for the convention, right? So we have over 100 people from the convention. There's about 170 registered, but over 100 that are in active discussions about, hey, I'd like to play this, or is anybody interested in this? And so we're seeing this organic growth of events and things that we haven't had before. And we're trying to do our best to take advantage of that. And, October 12, I think, the event's open for scheduling, and people will be able to take seats, and it's all going to fall together, I hope.
This is something I'd like to see wargaming focused events and historical gaming focused events be a little better at in general, actually, is what happens if the new person comes and doesn't know anybody that's there, right? I've been in that position where I show up and it's like, okay, well, I'll hang around for a few hours and see what happens. And maybe you get into a game and maybe you don't, because maybe all the games are already full. We've got a lot of small events, right? Yeah. This is I wouldn't even call 175 people a small event, though.
Yeah.
So, and if WBC is doing something clever to help manage this, good for them. Steal it.
Yeah, no, we're appreciative of the idea, and it's our convention is getting big, and we put a lot of effort and a lot of people at work trying to organize and execute. The execution of table assignments is probably the hardest thing that we do right now, and the more these events,
that was well handled at the Newport thing.
Good, I appreciate that. Yeah.
No, it was. I mean, I can look on it. I can read, thank God. So I look at the end of the table, and it had a schedule, and the table was mine at certain times, and it wasn't mine at other times, and it just worked out. I knew where to be. It was easy.
Yeah. So, Mark, you're going to do something Empire of the Sun oriented too, right? You wanted to do something.
Well, it's become like sort of a thing, So I figure I'll play a simul against South Pacific. We'll put we'll set it up, but I find somewhere around 8 to 12 is about where my brain, implodes. So we'll see how many I can, But again, using your technique, they have to bring the game, because I'll have one. I always bring one. I'll practice on the plane going over. But we will let them know that they're going to play the Americans. I always play the Japanese, just this way they can, I can get my head around what I'm supposed to do, so I don't have to keep, I can go in one direction, but I can't go in both directions in the same. That would be too much for my little brain.
So, Mark, this all builds off something we did. What was it, 6, 7, 8 years ago at an SD?
That was an accident. So it's funny.
I thought it was brilliant design, but if it was an accident, that's okay too.
No. What happened was Trevor Bender, our good friend, was going to run a South Pacific tournament. And well, the good news is the emergency that took him home wasn't that, resolved itself in a positive way. So let's just, so it, but it was.
But he had an unforeseen interruption.
Yeah, he had to go home, and then Harold comes to me and says, "What do you think you could pick it up?" And I was sitting there thinking, like, I just don't feel like organizing and running a tournament that I wasn't ready to do. So I just on the fly said, "Well, tell you what, I'll just play everybody." That was really how it happened, and it turned out to be a hoot. What's funny is I had just, and the idea occurred to me because I had just, so in chess, it's been this goes back in chess to like, 200 years, where like famous chess masters, grandmasters, chess masters, they didn't always have grandmasters, but the Morphees and the big names of that particular ilk used to play many people, so I was in a simul at the Marshall Chess Club where it was a grandmaster. It's either the French guy or the American guy. I can't remember which one it was, but he was playing. I think it was like 40 simultaneous games. And it didn't go well for almost everybody. By the way, like I think there was one person who got to a draw with this. So these guys are very good at what they're doing.
Clearly,
yeah. So I had just come out of that, so it just was like one of those, it was, in my mind because of that. I said, well, I'll try this with. It's never been. I don't know that it's ever been done before, but I'm not aware of it that anybody ever did that. So I said, well, I'll be the first. If not the first, I'm the first one to think of it this week. I mean, I don't know which one it is, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, it was really, I enjoyed it, And
there's a lot of great pictures of Mark pacing back and forth against. How many games did you actually play? Do you remember? 8 or 9?
I think in most cases, it's always been around. You'd have to look at the picture and count the humans, in it to get the right answer. But I think it's always been around 8. And I usually win, more than half the games, a couple of draws, and even in a couple of them, I actually, I lose a couple, but it's like it's a lot to concentrate on because I have to kind of get to the board and say, what are you doing? They have to be ready with their move when I show up. That's the other thing. When you play in a chess simul, the way it works is, the guy, the grandmaster plays his move, and then moves on. And then you get to think. And when the grandmaster shows up, you have to make a move. Like you have to have and you can get one time you get to say, I'm not ready yet. And they'll come, circle around all 35 or 40 games. But usually, I mean, you make a move and then they look at it, they make their move and they move on. So that's how it works. So I was using that basic, this is a tried and true method. So I would show up and they'd say, okay, here's the card I'm playing. Here's the attack. We roll some dice, react. It's a little bit more involved in obviously in an Empire of the Sun game than in chess because there's a lot of pieces moving. There's a little bit more to resolve, but there's also less games. But it all works out pretty well.
Yeah, it's fun.
Even so.
So the year after, Volko Runke and Morgan Guillon-Rete did the same thing with Pendragon. Where they played a faction against the
I played in it too.
And it was fun to watch too. There's a lot of activity, but Volko is much more competitive than his demeanor might say. And he was very interested in getting in as many or more games than Mark Herman got in.
Well, there's a little bit of,
yeah,
okay.
a little bit.
I don't, so I've gotten to the point in my life where all that stuff means nothing to me. It really doesn't. I'm past, I see a lot of, I'm going to be 70 and I see a lot of guys still trying to, be the man or woman. I don't know the woman's side, but the man's side, when they were 20, and it's like, it's sad. I mean, it's just really, when I was in college, I was a competitive swimmer. And one thing about competitive swimming is, how fast, I was a sprinter. I know exactly how fast I could do 2 laps in a pool, 4 laps in a pool at times. And I knew them. I can tell you definitively and metrically that I am literally half as fast as I used to be. I mean, it's measurable. I mean, I don't have to guess. Am I slower? No, I'm half as fast. And I know it, but I'm still here, still swimming.
But you're at least twice as fast as I am right now. So,
well, like I said,
a broken toe.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean.
Yeah, but it's funny for me to, I tell my friends this. By the way, did you guys see the movie Boys in the Boat?
I don't think so.
If you haven't seen it, you would really. So it's about in the 1936, the famous 1936 Olympics, where it was in Germany, Adolf Hitler, the whole thing. Right? America fielded a boat that came out of nowhere. Like it wasn't like it wasn't even the varsity boat from this university, but they won the national championship, and they went to the Olympics and they beat the Germans for the gold medal. So you already heard of Jesse Owens. Well, this is a great book, by the way, but the movie is worth seeing. But I was with my friends from who I rode with recently, and we were all talking about the movie and how it was. If you see that movie, you'll know what my life was exactly when I was in college. I mean, but I then said, but there's one exception. They go, well, what was the exception? I go, Hitler never came to any of our matches.
That we know of.
Which
he definitely was never there. I
generally considered a good thing.
And none of my crew races in college, when we won a couple of championships in the New York area, and I never saw Adolf Hitler at any of them.
That's good news.
Yeah,
good news.
Good news. Yeah, so it's good.
Gary, you're punching something.
Minus that.
What are you punching, Gary?
Federation and Empire. There's a million counters to this thing. So
yeah, I got to tell you, the Thunder. I was clipping. I usually don't clip, but these counters for Thunder on the Mississippi are. I mean, the nubs are like visibly longer than my finger. So I have to. I mean, it's like I can't even play them. I usually only clip tactical games. When you play a tactical game and you got like those, long lines, everybody's piled up. If you have nubs, everything's bouncing into each other. So that's annoying. But like and I have to say that GMT's their counters for like the new For the People edition. There was literally, you could get away with. I mean, I know Gary. I'm speaking heresy here, but
I'm slightly OCD about this, so it's okay.
But I would tell you that unless you really needed to, you didn't need to clip the counters. I mean, they were square and sharp on the edges. But but that's one of the things I started doing with Churchill. So the reason you have to clip counters, of course, is because you got to have them all stick together when you punch them out. But unless you have a punch board, so I've been going to any game that I do that has a lower number of counters, I'm going to use a punch board, so you don't have to clip them. They come naturally rounded. Churchill, Pericles, you don't have to do it. But Rebel Fury, I considered it, but then it was because what had happened is during Rebel Fury, my scope, I was supposed to only do 4 games. I ended up giving everybody 6, and that meant another map. And that was a negotiation. So I couldn't go for the punch board on the counters and have the map, given it had already like 500. So I said, that's fine. You'll just have to survive.
I'm happy with the fact that all of the games in the box.
What?
The Hammer of Thor. I'm not sure I'm familiar with that.
I didn't catch the R at the end. It looked like a P.
Yeah, I'm happy that all the games have their individual. All the battles in the game have their own counter mix, so you could technically play it on 4 different tables at the same time.
That was my intent.
Yeah, that's great. I love to see that.
Well, it was my idea that if you had, I wanted everybody, if you had like a group of guys, or it could be girls too, but a group of players who want to play the game, they go, well, this game's only a 2-player game. I go, well, yeah, but we can all play a battles. So
right.
And also, I don't know, Berg once did, what was the series he did where there was a series where the counters, he had multiple battles in the box that he did, and they had no designation of which battle they went to. I remember looking and going like, and I dropped the tray. Ooh. So I actually never played it again because I put them all in the bag as a forget about it. I'm not figuring this out.
I understand that instinct took completely. I think I've told you the story where the trays for War in Europe went flying across the room, and I had to pick that up. And it took me years. And just this year did I actually go through it again. It's been everything's been sitting in a giant 1-gallon Ziploc bag for War in Europe, 3,600 counters. For like 5 years, and I finally went through it, and believe it or not, it's only missing 1 counter. So I was happy.
Bought for very cheap it's that big Avalon Hill game that Reed did, the D-Day game.
Longest Day?
Yeah, Longest Day.
Big game.
Yeah, well, I got the game, and it came with 2 bags full of counters. And I remember it's a long time ago, I spent like some ridiculous amount of time sorting out, I don't remember which side, but I sorted out one side and kind of organized it. And then I said to myself, no, and I never did that.
So Hammer of Thor is a 1980s game, and I just
who's the publisher?
From your friends at Noble Knight. So there's roughly 120 counters,
Mm-hmm.
but look at they're almost punched. How about that for the back?
No, they're going to be pretty nubby. I can tell from here.
Yeah, they're going to have all that infamous Avalon. Avalon Hill was not the only company to have hairy counter sheets. You know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm talking about, Mark? Yeah. All those little whiskers of cardboard that came off the counters as you're punching them.
I tell you, I what I've liked, I don't know how they do it, but there's a Legion war games, wherever they were using, they were like literally punching the counters through, and they shrink wrapped them.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't come up. That was always the problem with the magazine game, because if you've ever seen you could imagine any kind of a magazine assembly like at SPI. We used to do it in Brooklyn, and I used to go down there periodically because I was one of the few people who knew where it was. It was like a hidden thing, behind this. It was just a weird. I wrote this in the book, but I actually was one of the few people who knew the entire printing infrastructure of SPI. So sometimes, on a weekend, Redmond say, "Hey, can you go down there and do this?" And I go, "Sure," and I go do something. You had these long tables with ladies, mostly ladies, sliding all this stuff in. So the counter sheets had to be like almost. If you've ever looked at some of the older SPI ones, they don't really even go to the edge. I mean, it's like almost like four like slots around the counter because otherwise they didn't want them falling out. That would be a bigger problem. And so, we just all suffered with that. And somebody must have figured out clipping from that but sometimes I have SPI counters that look like almost like an H with a very thick middle. it's like, I remember Vera Cruz was like that. I mean, it was just, but that was the problem of, when you ship the counters and you go to stores and, the counters come apart, in the retail chain, it's a disaster. So you make people suffer.
We seem to have lost Gary, but I think he'll be back. Mark, what's the timetable on your
book?
I'm
right here.
Oh, there we go.
What's
the timetable on your book?
So it's done. I have a printed copy. If you want me, I can run upstairs and show it to you. But I have one printed copy that came to me.
What's the other 2,000 I'm interested in?
Yeah. So my understanding is, I would say that I am hopeful that we'll have copies at your con. That's really the short story. But I have zero control over shipping containers and port facilities
and pirates.
Yeah, the pirate. Well, the pirates is really more about getting the containers, but not about the actual piracy. Yeah. So, but what I was really pleased, when you pick up a book and it's much heavier than you think it should be, which means that the paper quality is really nice. I mean, Kai really outdid herself, and the illustrations are just. And as I told other people, it was printed in South Korea, by the way. It wasn't printed in China, so at least an ally of the United States. But these guys, when we sent the mechanical over, it's not a mechanical anymore, but it sent the files over. They went through them. We got back like 60 questions, and remember, it wasn't anything about the writing. It was like, this piece of art could be over by a fraction of a micron here. I mean, it was that level of detail. So all that got fixed. So it's about as perfect as any book's ever going to be. And it has a cloth. It has one of those little string bookmarks in it.
It's going to be very fancy.
Oh, it's really what I wanted. In fact, and by the way, I can publicly acknowledge Harold's contribution to the book. Was I called him as a smart businessman. I said, hey, and I told him about these so the contracts. If you do a book with a publisher, like you write a book and you do the publisher, and I've read. Remember, Berg taught me how to read contract. I mean, Berg was an actual lawyer, but I learned how to read publishing contracts through him. He gave me some tips, as they say, after making a ton of mistakes. And what happens if I give a book to a publisher, there's a clause in most of these contracts that says that if they have the right to excerpt it into another book, like an anthology, and as long as the other uses of your book are in print, you can't get your book back. Oops. So I wasn't ever going for that. And so now, but I managed, I go, Harold said, why don't you talk to, Gene Billingsley, and now GMT is publishing their first book. So, so it's all due to Harold's great suggestion. And what's nice is, I hold the full copyright, but with GMT, that's not a problem. And we made 2,000. There was, if you look, there's a little over 1,500 pre-orders, and it'll sell it eventually. And it may be the only 2,000 we ever produce. It's not, it's not going to be Harry Potter. So it's going to be whatever it's going to be.
Is that proportion like? So let's say they're going to print. I mean, is that the actual number? They're going to print 2,000.
They printed 2,000.
Okay, and then if
That's
there's
not a guess.
So is that proportion of copies that are already on the books as haven't been pre-ordered versus number of copies that they print, typical for their games too?
No,
okay.
This is like they were, they're being cautious because they have no idea.
Sure.
No, the usual, I would say that, Gene said this before, they're looking to have a 2-year supply. And how they figure that out is just based on,
Well, but it's all about the velocity, right? So
yeah.
You would be amazed at how few they publish of some games, and then how many they do of others. So Mark Herman or a Volko get huge volumes, and then someone that might sell fewer gets. Well,
I think it depends.
But the idea is, some people mistake their business model for the idea of keeping things on the shelves, and they don't really have any interest. They want to sell it and sell it quick. And then if there's additional interest, they may do a reprint. But it's, I mean, Mark's games and Volko's games are different. But for most of the games, it's not about keeping things in the inventory. It's a very different view of the business.
Plus, this is uncharted territory for GMT, right? They've never done a book before. I suspect that the extra copies that weren't already spoken for will be gone within 2 months. That's just a guess, but we'll see what happens.
And it's going to be, and in fact, I talked to Gene about this, right? And it won't be a P500 for the book. It'll be a P1000. In other words, the unit cost was based on 1,000, when they figured it out. And so I just said, let's make sure, when if there's 1,000 people who want another copy, then it's worth printing it again, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
If not,
there's a very interesting post on on X. Is that what we call it now?
I'm not calling it anything.
Twitter.
I'm not calling it anything anymore.
Oh yeah, so you dropped out.
Use Kickstarter, right, to publish games, and sure, it's about profit, but it's also about risk management and predictability and accessibility to customers and all sorts of interesting things. And of course, Gene was, before Kickstarter was Kickstarter, had P500, and it's also, the great thing about P500 is it's just more favorable to the customer, because you order something on P500, and then the day before it ships or they charge, you say, hey, I'd like to pull out, you're out. It's and that doesn't happen in Kickstarter. You're kind of tied.
That's a really
thing is, well, remember something, the when Gene started, he had consulted, and he's even said this in interviews, he and I explained to him in some detail that you would appreciate, Harold, if you ever want to hear the story about how SPI. So the way your company stays in business is two things, but the main one is cash flow, right? If you don't have cash flow, you're out of business. That's the simple story. And hopefully you're making a profit but without cash flow, you're dead. It's like oxygen. No cash flow, you just you die of starvation. It doesn't matter that you were making a profit or not, because you're out of business. So the P500 was there to resolve, cash flow. In other words, SPI was always in debt to its printers. So every time they got any money they had to go pay off debts that
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, you get slow payment from the distribution. But now that you're on the internet, you get it up front, you get cash flow going. And so when you go to the printer, the P500, which is really more like the P750, I think these days, you go to the printer, you order the game, but you have the money to pay for the print run.
Mm-hmm.
There. So you're not ever, but now where you start to create risk is how much more than what you sold, right? And that's you asked me, Gary, about what is 2,000 relative, 1,500 to 2,000. That is definitely not the model for the games.
Mm-hmm.
This is a model for we have no idea what's going to happen.
Right. Right.
We should have
which is why I'm telling people, get it while you can.
Well, I appreciate that. And it'll be heartening. And then the other thing that, that I've told people is, this is not a game about war game design. This is a book about how Mark Herman designs war games.
Mm-hmm.
It's not unsubtle either, by the way. So one thing I'm sure of, I'm not wrong.
That's right.
Because I know how I do it.
Well, you'll get arguments, but you're not wrong.
Yeah, you argue all you want. But I've done 70 full games, over 100 game titles. I call that titles as like expansions and all the other Hazarai I've done. So after 100 times, I kind of have an idea what I'm doing. For me, I can't tell anybody else.
That may be all that matters. Ricardo Massini and Maurice Suckling have some very nice books on.
Mm-hmm.
I have both. I don't have I had the Suckling book in Kindle, but I do have the Ricardo book in hardcover. Yes, it's a very nice book.
Ricardo's book just came out, as I recall.
Yeah, but they're really good academic. Like if you were teaching a class, these are the books you'd want. You wouldn't want my book; you'd want their books for a class. Very academic. The history of war games, and
it covers a lot of background and territory. Mark, I'd love to have a discussion with you publicly sometime about the fall of SPI. There are all sorts of issues and interesting things that happen there. Of course, GMT came up with the P500 coming out of the collapse of the wholesalers, right? The distributors, which caused a massive crisis in the industry. And then on top of that, there's this crack cocaine that publishers get, which is every incremental game costs a little bit less than the last. It's a fantasy, but this is a math problem that they create in their head.
It's called a utility curve, by the way.
And so in the end, they end up printing many more than they can functionally sell within a reasonable time. And they have this fallacy of inventory, keeping inventory, which is crazy. But again, that's a topic for another time. Mark, you and I have had this discussion that turns into an argument. So we'll do it when we're face to face and we can go to fisticuffs.
Really? What's the argument?
Love you, Mark. I'm just kidding. So, Gary, you're coming to SD Hist. What are you interested in playing? Are you and I'm going to try to talk you into maybe running an event or two where you can teach something that's of interest to you.
Oh, good God. I don't know about that. But I definitely want to get in on either Rebel Fury or the Army of the Potomac stuff.
Well,
depending on what Mark's cooking.
That you're going to play. You'll be the opening of the Army of the Potomac play. How about we agree?
Okay, that sounds great. I'll be there the whole time. I'll be there on Thursday.
Yeah, well, I'll have it set up, and you. So it's So what else? But I don't mean to cut you off, but you got that going. So
I got a couple of luncheons lined up so far. I'm supposed to do something with Justin Facino. But I don't really have absolutely rock hard concrete plans either. So
we'll try to get you to do a seminar. People would be interested in some Q&A about.
I have no idea why, but sure, that's fine.
Well, I can't explain it, but I know that it exists. And then there's got to be something you love, something you could teach. OCS? Would you teach OCS?
I could teach OCS or BCS. Having done the whole teach and play BCS thing at Origins this past year, I think I'd like to adjust my methodology for doing that with BCS specifically, because I feel like it was a little more herky-jerky than I wanted it to be. So I'm probably a little better polished with OCS than anything.
So you would prefer to do OCS rather than BCS? Is that the
sure?
conclusion?
But if you got Chip Saltzman coming again, then he can do it. So
yeah. He's not able to come, but he'll certainly be at the next East Con. So that was
okay.
that was a treat.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it would be fun to have some people bring their own games. You kind of give us
that was, I didn't know him before, but that's the guy who had the wall charts for OCS and everything.
Yeah,
What a
yeah, that's Chip.
That boy was well prepared.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And plus, he's got that very resonant baritone voice of Chip Saltzman. That's fantastic on camera. So,
but even better is he's just a good dude, right? I mean,
he is
absolutely a wonderful representative of that company and that system. And
absolutely.
all of those players that love that game. I just found him to be delightful.
Chip is an absolutely charming fellow. Yeah. I will see him again before too long. Well, I'll see him again in February. So
good.
Hey Gary, I have a question for you.
Sure.
So I sort of saw highlights of your pilgrimage to Noble Night Games. So what was the most of all the things that you experienced? What was the thing that surprised you the most, or was the most enjoyable?
The surprise was, and I didn't mention this on the Monday night show, they have two warehouses. They have a satellite warehouse because their main warehouse overflows periodically. I was not aware of that, considering that they've got about 40,000 square feet of warehouse space already.
Wow, that's a lot of games.
And it's packed. Oh, well, wait for the video tour that they gave us of a said warehouse. They also have a huge, like almost a whole wall of just parts. War games that are missing stuff, and then they'll periodically go through that stuff and see if they can assemble complete copies or incomplete copies, as it were. So I didn't really know that. I had actually peeked into the warehouse before. That they would let me peek last time I was there, but they didn't give me a tour. It was like literally leaning over, and I'm like, oh. So there was a lot of that, a lot of oogling, and I was not the only person oohing and eyeing as we would pass the random things in the warehouse either.
I can only imagine. Now, where is it located? I mean, is the warehouse like in the middle of nowhere? I would hope
it is it's not in a commercial area. It's in like a commercial park. So it's not like in a strip mall or anything like that. And their retail space is right up front.
For that many square feet. In a resale business, that would have to be cheap space. You wouldn't want to be paying a lot of money.
Oh yeah, I would think so. Yeah.
I mean, I've run enough businesses. That would be the one time in my life, believe it or not, I was the overseer. I wasn't, they were people doing the real work, but I was the overseer for $500 million worth of office leases on a yearly basis. So I got to know a lot about space. But these were all Class A building space, like the stuff that you would use, Harold, in your old company.
Now, this is the kind of place where you'd expect to find like a warehouse, right? Yeah. It's just in like an industrial park off like a street that's named something like Commercial Parkway or something like that, where it's just big freestanding steel buildings. But their retail, I mean, I'd been up there before, right? So it's not like I was going in there 100% cold. But they've got a very nice retail space, and they've got an enormous warehouse, and apparently a second enormous warehouse somewhere else in town.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just wonder. Those kind of things fascinate me because the cash flow. You remember they're giving money out to get the games, and then they have to. I guess there must be some kind of triage process of what is the actual quality of what they just bought, and the whole bit. And then they have to price it and then put it up. There's a whole process to put it up, and that takes time and money. And then you got to hope that somebody wants it.
Well, if you just like walk in with stuff, they will take they'll take their time and go through it carefully. So it's not like they're just like a lot of there's a Cleveland game store, for example, that will buy stuff and he'll offer whatever he offers, but he'll just like look in the box that you brought and say, I'll give you $75 for that. And they don't do that at Noble Night. They actually go through stuff.
Well, there's a very well-known used bookstore in New York, in Manhattan, called The Strand.
I've heard of it.
And it used to be Thursdays, but so if you're on, it's on 12th and Broadway. And if you're on, you're there at Thursday between like the late morning to like noon, there's a line of people and they're selling books. There's a line forms up, and they used to have it, where people would bring like carloads, but now I think they have a kind of a rule, like you can only bring like what you can carry yourself. They're not looking for you to bring in 10,000 books. And so people line up and they look at them and they say, okay, we'll give you whatever, and then you sell your books.
Well, from what the folks, not that this happens every week, but from what they're telling me, every once in a while they will literally have made an arrangement with somebody to drop off like a semi trailer full of whoever's old games. So that has happened.
This is sadly, as I always joke, I'm at some point this whatever number of games I have has to either go into a dumpster or go to somewhere. So I don't know what's gonna. My son, well, I've decided, and he's agreed. It's my son's problem. So I'll hopefully at least work out some kind of arrangement for him. So, but I don't know.
No, it's an issue that a lot of us are facing, right? As we get older, these big collections.
Well, I think I'm going to do what I've come. My late and wonderful friend Peter Perla. They gave all of, and he had a lot of games. As you would imagine.
I would think.
No, I know he did. I've been in his house many, many times. And they gave them all to the Marine Corps. So I'm going to talk to the guys at Carlisle, the Army. Not that I don't like the Marine Corps, but I lecture. I've been lecturing regularly for the Army forever, and I've worked for them, and so I know that. And they've got, in Carlisle, they've got the room for it. So maybe I could work something out, with a curator, or the Naval War College, where I'm a professor in that museum. I mean, maybe I'll talk to Robert Doan, see what he's got in mind. But it'll be something like that. I think that's the best thing for me to do with them, given what I've done with my life. So,
well, I think that's a challenge that everybody's going to hit sooner or later. Those are pretty nice.
Is that? I like the. What's the?
So there's a few interesting things. Terry Leeds did the work. Terry Leeds did the work.
It looks nice, yeah.
And the shield is from the USS Midway, which is the museum ship there in San Diego. And he used that, but he also put some things in there that were influences from our lost friend Bobby Nunez. And so Bobby loved Lord of the Ring, so you can see the elven text in the red banner.
I can't actually.
I can't see a thing, Harold. But I did notice that the axes are from the Lord of the Rings films as well.
Yes, and then of course there's a Atreides tattoo in there from Bobby. That was nice. His favorites. So nice. That's for sale to convention attendees, and I'm gonna close. Great talking to you guys. Appreciate you taking the time to talk to the convention attendees, and looking forward to seeing you both in San Diego.
See you then.
Can't wait. Looking forward to the trip. Looking forward to the weather. Looking forward to the food, and looking forward to meeting everybody, especially those folks I haven't had a chance to meet in person yet.
Awesome.
And I'm looking for some good seafood.
And the food. Did I mention the food?